Batman is doing what he does out of, in a lot of ways, kind of vengeance and mourning his parents' deaths. Nightwing does what he does to celebrate his parents' lives.
Yeah.
He's a born performer.
I had an interesting upbringing. I'm not really going to go into the details of it here, but there are really only two people in the world that can really understand how I feel about a lot of things, because there's only two people in the world that really experienced a lot of the weird things that I experienced as a younger child, and it's my two brothers. They're the only people that really saw things from the same perspective I can. So really, there's only like 3 or 4 people that could ever understand where Dick Grayson's coming from in respects to Batman, Gotham, crime, and stuff like that. Barbara Gordon's going to be one of them because she has a relationship like that with Batman. Jason Todd, that one's way more complicated. I don't even know if he kind of feels the same way, because he didn't quite make it out of puberty, with Batman. He didn't get to grow up and run away as an adult. I wouldn't even say Damian Wayne, but gosh dang it, the Tim Drake. He would be the one. The second one that I would say would be able to understand where Dick Grayson's coming from, besides Barbara Gordon.
Yes, Tim Drake. Tim Drake's relationship with Grayson is going to be a big part of the next chapter of my thesis that I'm going to get into after this one's done. Their brotherly relationship and how both of them, those two together, are probably the two who have had the most positive influence on Bruce. But you're definitely right that there are very few people in the world in DC Comics who can understand where Grayson comes from and understand the situation that he's in, and Barbara Gordon is certainly one of them. I would say that there's probably 4 or 5 people. Barbara Gordon for sure, Tim Drake, Jason Todd, Jason a little less so, but he still understands, Damian Wayne, and Superman. I think Superman understands a lot of what Grayson goes through, because he's been there besides Batman all along. So, he got to see Grayson when he was a child as Robin and grow up into Nightwing. And, there's a lot of things that Grayson talks about the Superman that he would never think of taking to Bruce. So,
what's interesting, if you look at the 3 sons, we'll say Dick Grayson is the healthy version of Batman. We can say that Jason Todd is the more unhealthy version of Batman, where you're going on to maybe Punisher-like tendencies. And then when you have Tim Drake, he's he's like Batman that never lost his parents. He's that cerebral thinker. He's strategically minded, but he isn't caught in that loop of revenge and things like that. So he's like the Batman that would have been if he'd never lost his parents.
Yes. And in a lot of ways, Tim Drake is the healthiest of the entire family, because he never had that tragedy that gripped him and pushed him to do this. He did it of his own accord because he's that smart, and he just had that much of a will to make a difference. He wanted to be Robin. He didn't have it thrust upon him. He wasn't offered the chance. He went seeking the job.
He didn't really seek the job. He went in there, figured out who it was, and then realized Batman wouldn't be whole again without a new Robin to help him get over Jason Todd's death. So he volunteered himself and went in there of his own volition. But he wasn't driven by anything other than compassion for Bruce, which makes him completely unique from all the other Robins.
Yep, he was driven just by a compassion for the original Batman and Robin, and for Batman himself, because he could see how much he was hurting and how different his methods were after Jason was killed. He's the only one who has ever openly said, "I wanted to be Robin." That's what I wanted. I didn't want to be necessarily at the start. He doesn't want to be Batman, but I think that changes a little bit down the road. But Tim Drake's definitely the most unique case of all of them in terms of that, because he didn't have any kind of tragic upbringing or trauma in his life. He was just kind of a normal dude who was just really smart, used common sense to figure out who Batman and Robin were, and decided he had to help Batman out. He had to make him healthy again.
So we do have a couple of comments that you can respond to. This is from Computer Robots. He says, "Batman is crazy. I wish I or many others could read your thesis one day because it sounds very interesting." This will be published eventually, correct?
Yeah, you'll be able to do that. Once I get it turned in, there's a function on my university's website that you can go back and read any published theses. So once I get it finished and turned in, you guys will be able to read it for sure.
We will present that. We're not going to read the thesis on the channel. That's a little bit too long. But we will talk about your overall thesis, how it went, and we will give a link to people eventually in time once it finally does get published. Because I'm with Computer Robots. I want to read it too. Of course, it sounds interesting. I've been hearing about it for a very long time now. We've been talking for quite a while about Batman and things like that. This is also from Computer Robots. Do you think that Catwoman would have ever opened Batman's eyes a little bit to see the brighter things in life? And I think this is probably where you're saying that Tom King missed a great opportunity.
Yes, and you could see. I haven't finished Hush. But I found it interesting that there's a moment in Hush when Selina kisses him on the rooftops, and Bruce just spends the next couple of days trying to figure out exactly what happened. And he says a couple times, I have these feelings for Selina, but I'm not sure what they are or where they're going to go. There's been a couple opportunities that DC has had that they can use Selina to open him up. And that is the big thing that I was talking about with Tom King and his missed opportunity with the Batman run. I would love to see a writer just take that relationship and go with it. Let Bruce bring her into his life, into the Batcave. This is my identity, lay everything out on the table and have those two fall in love and just go for it. I do think Selina is the one character Grayson can make him see the brightness to a point, but Selina's the one who could make it stay. I do agree with that.
Yeah, of course, there were also undertones of that in The Long Halloween, which we just reviewed not too long ago on the channel, to where, I guess it's more in Dark Victory, where, Bruce has this kind of weird on again, off again relationship with Selina Kyle, and she's kind of ready to commit to it, sort of, but he is so unreliable because he doesn't realize that when you're in a relationship or you have a girlfriend, you can't just blow them off to go beat people's asses in Gotham City. You kind of have to be available, especially on the holidays. And of course, that's the times when he was blowing her off, like Thanksgiving and stuff like that. But he doesn't understand that.
Yes, and Selina, I think Selina said to him in Dark Victory, like, I would have never left you alone on New Year's Eve or Valentine's Day, but you left me, alone on those days because you had other things to do. And again, this is, an area where Grayson to me is so relatable as a character because he does kind of do that. He'll, but he'll be midway through a date when he gets a call that he has to go answer his Nightwing. And he'll run off and then he'll come back and he has to deal with those consequences of the girl being mad at him because he ran off halfway through the date. So that makes it a little more relatable that Grayson actually gets into those sticky situations and has to work his way out of it. Because we've all blown off a date before. We've all messed up in something or other like that. We've all had that happen. So it's much more relatable to us with Grayson than it is for Bruce, where he just doesn't even go on the date. He just blows the whole thing off.
Yeah, I definitely, when my wife gets pissed off at me, I definitely wish I could handle it like Bruce Wayne and not like Dick Grayson. Just be like, "What, you're upset? I didn't even do anything." Dick Grayson's like, "Listen, I realize I was supposed to be here, and it was not my intention. I wanted to be here, but I couldn't be here. I am so sorry. Please forgive me." And Bruce is like, "I don't know what to tell you. I didn't do nothing."
Exactly. But that's what makes us relate so much more to Grayson. That's why he's so good.
Yeah, he's they're both great characters. Obviously, Batman is the flagship. He's the icon at DC. He's eclipsed Superman at this point. Although I think Superman's probably the better character. In my humble opinion. But Dick Grayson is my second favorite DC hero, right behind Hal Jordan. Another character when you think about Hal Jordan. When you say, oh, how does he personify Will? The man literally, not man, as a child, he literally watched his father die as a test plane pilot in front of his family. And when he grows up to honor his father, he decides to do it the same thing. To jump in that cockpit again, go against his fear and go against the fear of his entire family to do it in the honor of his father. That is tremendous will. That's why he is the perfect Green Lantern.
Yes. And I believe it was in Vendetti's Green Lantern. I wrote a quote from Hal Jordan down that I keep with me all the time. Because I lost my father too. He says, I didn't let my father's death define me. It didn't make me who I am. I'm my own person. It never took over my life. And that quotes like that stick with you.
Oh man.
You know?
I know this isn't supposed to be a Green Lantern. Obviously, I'm going to cut it out for the YouTube video, but there's that great moment where he's in the jet and he needs to go faster. And he's in his, and he's sitting there. He's like, I need, how do I go faster? How do I go faster? And all of a sudden his father is his wingman. He's in the cockpit with him and he's saying, I'm here with you, son. And he finally gets the will to go even faster because his father is there with him and supporting him. Is just one of the best moments in DC Comics history. No one knows about it. Unfortunately, no one thinks about it as great as it is. Venditti's the best.
Yes. Yep. And I the same with Grayson. Grayson has moments like that with his parents where usually it's through Scarecrow's fear toxin because he gets hit with that a lot. Where his parents are the ones who bring him back from it because he envisions them doing their trapeze and he says, I'm up in the air right now. I need you guys to ground me, and they do. They work
almost
as an
like
inspiration
Flash.
for him.
When Wally West was kind of in the abyss, he was lost to time and memory, and he was not grounded because his wife no longer remembered who he was. His children didn't remember who he was. Not even Barry Allen remembered who he was. And finally, Barry was able to see him and it grounded him back into reality. He was able to return because of love and hope. That is what makes DC special.
Yes,
Damn you, Dan Didio.
Wally had Barry as his lightning rod, and all these characters that are so relatable and so great. Wally, Hal Jordan, Dick Grayson. They all have this source, that keeps them grounded. And for Grayson, it's the loss of his parents. For Hal Jordan, it's his father, dying in the test pilot run. But Bruce, instead of being grounded by his parents' death, he builds his world around it. And that's why he's so flawed.
So we do have another question from Computer Robots. What can you say about Dick Grayson's relationship with Starfire and Barbara Gordon? I think both of them have brought the bright side of Dick Grayson as well.
I haven't been exposed to too much of his relationship with Starfire. I do have to get through more of the new Teen Titans. But if I had to pick one, I would want him to settle down with Barbara Gordon. She just seems like they just seem like they're perfect for each other. Their histories, their relationship through her being Batgirl and him being Robin and Nightwing. They just seem to really be perfect for one another. But Starfire did bring that brightness out in Grayson, and she was one of the big motivations behind him kind of, giving up the Robin mantle and then, kind of drifting off for a little while, and because he saw a lot of elements of Batman coming out in him. He was getting a little darker, he was getting more brutal, and Starfire was really the one to kind of point out to him and say, hey, you're not Batman. You're your own person. And, I'm starting to be a little troubled by what's going on. And, he had to take some time to find himself. But once he did, she was a big cause of that. So both of the characters obviously have had huge effects on Grayson's history. But if I personally had to pick one, I like him better with Barbara Gordon, especially with her as Oracle and Chuck Dixon's Nightwing run. It's good stuff.
Yeah, this is an interesting family. Of course, the original intent of the video was just to talk about Bruce and Dick and their relationship with trauma. But this has been so interesting. I'm probably going to include this part as well I'll figure out I'm not sure what I'm going to name it, but I think that is going to wrap up our time here. I don't want to take all of your day, and we got Dylan from the Real Comic Book Gamer and Skip showing up in about 15 minutes, and I'm going to need a little break. Is there anything else that you wanted to say before we wrap this up, Josh?
Not really. Just if you've never really considered looking at, comic characters in this way, it's really fun and very enlightening to do so. I didn't think trauma studies was going to be something I was interested in. And then I started reading a lot about it, and I started learning a lot about the way, our minds and our emotions work and how our bodies process stuff like this. And, I learned a lot about myself and a lot about the coping mechanisms that I use to deal with trauma in my life that I didn't even know, were actually coping mechanisms. I just thought it was kind of how I was, just normal behavior. But it's really fascinating to kind of learn and look a little deeper into these characters. So if you've never really taken it into consideration, I recommend doing it. It really endears you to a lot of the characters and their struggles. It's pretty fascinating stuff.
All right, thanks, Josh. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.